I want to share with you one thought, a couple of thoughts as we wrap up our time together, looking back at Psalm 46. I won't read the whole psalm today. We left off yesterday with this, that God, let me back up one page here. There is a river, the streams whereof the city shall make glad the city of God. We talked about that 2 days ago. The holy place of the tabernacle of the Most High. So we talked about God being sovereign and on his throne and in control, but also very present in me because I'm his temple right now. I'm his temporary dwelling place until he brings me into his presence physically and bodily. Verse 5 is still talking about that future city and God being in his tabernacle, but referring to the city with the pronoun her. God is in the midst of her, the city. She shall not be moved. God shall help her, and that right early. So David is celebrating the day that Jerusalem will be, there will be a river in Jerusalem. God will be present permanently in Jerusalem. That God will be in the midst of her, and she will never, ever be moved, and that he will be that very present help. Now, I got to tell you, that's awesome in terms of promise and prophecy and looking forward. It's awesome in terms of how God has kept his people. But let me tell you what that drives at in me right now in terms of a personal application. God is in the midst of her, and she shall not be moved. This trial, this crisis, this virus, has forced us to go deeper in the things in our lives that cannot be moved. And that's a good process. Things around us are moving. We talked about that yesterday. Things around us are proving to be unstable, unpredictable, and nobody really has answers. We want to be optimistic and hopeful and believing that we can rebound right back, right? That's where I'm at. But in reality, there's also, in the back of my mind, we don't know for sure what God has in mind. And so at a moment like this, I want to encourage you to let your heart rest and let your mind meditate on this today, that there are some things in God's economy that will not, that cannot, that will never, ever be moved, okay? Lots of things can be moved in our temporary physical life, in this material, physical, natural world. Lots of things can move. Lots of things can change. But there are some things, and especially in the gospel, in the hope that we have in Christ, there are some things that are absolutely unmovable. And those things make us, at our core, at our real substance, those things make us unmovable, okay? And I love this. We anchor our hearts to that which is unmovable, unmoving, it never changes. And then we engage in doing the things that are connected to those things that are unmovable. So I remain unmoved because Jesus is unmoved. His plan for me is unmoved. And he has called us. Now I want you to think about this. He's called us. He's placed us. This is no mistake, okay? This has hit me the last few mornings as I've spent time with the Lord and meditating and considering these things. This was in God's script before your life began and before my life began. It is no mistake that he has called us to be Emmanuel, that he has called us to be his church in this region, that he's put us together in this body. I am here on assignment in this time for God's purposes, and so are you. God created us, designed us, equipped us, prepared us. He has planted us and placed us. He's given us his assignments and resources and his message for this moment. We are his representatives, his ambassadors. We are co-laborers together with him in ways that cannot be moved. We are grounded, we are backed up, we are resourced by a God who cannot be moved, and we are deployed in this intense missional moment by God's design. And I got to tell you, that gives me great hope. It gives me great assurance. It gives me great confidence and great encouragement. When I want to maybe fear or worry or doubt or wonder or can't wait for life to get back to normal, you know, what God tells me to do is, hey, This is my doing. I'm in charge. You're my ambassador. You're my co-laborer. You're my tool in this moment, my vessel. So embrace this moment. Seize this moment. Be on mission. Engage this moment. And do what God has given you to do. Now, I'm speaking to myself. I'm speaking to you as well. That he placed us as his people in this moment. First century Israel, Jerusalem, those Christians weren't maybe they were biting their nails, but my point is they didn't stay there. They might have hit the ground, but they didn't stay on the ground. They got up and they surged. They just, wherever they had to go to survive, they took the gospel with them. They planted churches. They took the love of Christ because they recognized there were things unmoved. The resurrection made the truest things about them unmovable. The deepest things about them were unmovable. And just as Psalm 46, just as the psalmist recognizes that God's presence in the city of Jerusalem makes the city unmovable, so God's presence in you and in me makes us, at our deepest core, unmovable, okay? The worst thing that can happen to me is I die and go to heaven, and death only makes me better, okay? So there are some wonderful, unmovable things that this psalm calls our hearts and minds to. As we wrap up today, I wrote down a couple things to share with you. George Herbert, this was a great quote I came across this morning. He was the 17th century poet and priest for the Church of England. One of his quotes was, "Storms make oaks take deeper root." And doesn't a time like this drive us deeper? But the other thing I wrote down was just the idea of taking what we're talking about in these Psalms and letting your heart meditate on them. I hope that this noon moment will kind of marinate in your heart and mind throughout the rest of the day. And I hope you're doing that every day, that you're considering these Psalms. It's why I'm taking my time to go through these Psalms, because God calls us to meditate. He calls us to thought time, okay? And if there's anything about life slowing down right now and being home more and all that, it does allow us. It's God giving us permission to have time to think. And that's what meditation does. And God tells us to meditate on these things, give ourselves wholly to them. In his law doth he meditate. In God's law does he meditate day and night, Psalm 1 says. And so when you're meditating, you're bringing your mind back to God. You're bringing your emotions back to God to be the center of your attention. And really meditating on unmovable things right now in life is going to be the key to your best emotional health and your best psychological flourishing, your spiritual maturity. God is going to use this meditative moment of looking at the Psalms and letting your heart and soul digest this. It's going to be formative in your life if you'll allow it to be. Our hearts grow cold, our emotions take over, our fear rises back up, our doubts try to rematerialize. But meditating on these things brings us back into the presence of God's warmth and God's reality and God's unmovable truth and promise in our life. And it causes us to hold to Him and hold to His will and release our own. And all of this is a good work that God is doing in us. So I'm going to leave it there for today, Psalm 46. We will pick it up on, let me think here, Monday. But I do hope to see you tonight at 6 p.m. as we live stream on Facebook, on the church site, ebcnewington.com, or on YouTube. You can find us in all three places. So the reason I tell you that is if Facebook has trouble this weekend, which it may, there's options. You can go to the church website, or you can join us in other ways. So don't forget about that. Don't forget your video. Don't forget to pray. Don't forget to go to enoughfortoday.church. I love you. I miss you, church family. We are praying for you, and we are looking forward to a tremendous Easter weekend celebration online. We hope you'll join us. We'll be able to preach the gospel to more people than we ever have, and we can't wait to see you again. Have a great Friday. Keep your heart and mind focused on what Jesus did on the cross.